Hey guys, how you doing today? I wanted to show you this beautiful little plant. This is a plant that I got last year. I bought it as cuttings. I think I got it like on eBay, I believe. But this this is the silver dollar vine. It is a succulent. It's Xerosychios dangui. Oh, the names for these plants kill me. Um, Anyways, this is a really beautiful plant. I love it. I actually had this plant many years ago, probably, oh boy, over 20 years ago, maybe even, actually, oh boy, I'm showing my age. It's probably been actually more like over 35 years ago, because when I moved out, my mom had a big plant of the silver dollar vine. And when I moved out into my first apartment, she gave me some cuttings of it, and I grew them out and took them from my apartment over to the farmhouse. I don't really actually remember whatever happened to the plant. I know it got rather large, and I had it in a hanging basket, and it drooped down. It was beautiful. Um, anyways, this is a gorgeous plant. It is a succulent. So, it actually comes from Madagascar. So, and a really cute fact about this plant is it's actually in the family of the cucumber and squash family. So, that's kind of cool. I read that in the first website, or link that I read about this plant, and that's been about a year ago. And then I looked it up to make sure that, it was correct, and a lot of the websites were saying the same thing. So it is in the cucumber and squash family, which is pretty cool. Anyways, when I bought this last year, I bought it of 820 in 820. So it's almost, I've had it almost a year, but it was just, I think, like 2 cuttings, and they were rooted, and they've been in this, well, no, I think I had them in a smaller pot to begin with, and then I just bumped them up into this pot. Sometime late winter, I think I put them into this little bit bigger pot, because she really started growing and vining out. You can see how it vines out. It vines out like a Hoya. It gets these long tendrils on it, and then the leaves start growing. See how it does? The vine comes out first, and then the leaves start growing. So, really cool. So as long as you have it in the right conditions, because this plant can actually take full sun or part sun. So you can put it in a super sunny window. I grew this in my south window in my plant room all winter long, and now it's actually out on my back porch in an east window, which I think I'm going to change that when I go to put her back, because I just brought her in to water her and dust her off a little bit and do this video, but I'm going to put her in, I think I'm going to put her back here in my south window, because she was growing a lot better there in full sun. So it will get kind of a red tinge to it. And I've noticed since I've moved it, it was silver, and now it's more of a greeny. It turned a dark green color, and it is actually supposed to be a silvery color. So I'm going to put her back in the full sun in my south window and see what kind of changes come about with that. But this plant is gorgeous when it's big. I'll try to get a couple pictures from the internet of this thing huge. I mean, it is beautiful. And I love how the stems on it are really skinny, and then the leaves are just super thick and succulent, and they're so round. I mean, they're just perfectly rounded. You can see it's a really neat plant, and it's so easy to take care of. Now this plant I let mine dry all the way down, It is in a terracotta, and it's in a small terracotta, so it does dry, especially with the heat that we've been having. Woof! It dries down pretty quickly. So, but it is drought tolerant. I mean, even if you would have to let this plant, because the leaves are so thick, I mean, I think you would have to probably let this be dry for a really, really long time before the leaves will start to shrivel on it. I don't know, I've never let mine do that, but I usually let her dry down and completely. I can usually tell by the weight of my pot. Like right now, I know I just watered her and I soaked her thoroughly and I washed all the leaves off, and this pot is really heavy right now. But I know in a few days, you know, she'll be totally dried out again. Maybe not quite so much in here as she was outside in more heat, but I'll probably be able to go a couple, 2 or 3 more days before I'll have to water her again. But this plant can get huge from what I read, and some of the pictures I was seeing on the internet, oh my gosh, some of them pictures were huge, and it was saying it can be 12 foot high and 6 foot wide. Now you figure 12 foot high, okay? 12 feet high, and that's letting them grow up, because they will grow up also, like on stuff. Like out in the wild, they would grow up a tree or, you know, whatever. But I like mine to hang down because I like the hanging effect. My mom's was gorgeous. It wasn't huge, but it was in a smaller hanging pot, but it was gorgeous. It hung all down, and I loved it. She had it for many, many years. She had that plant in her sewing room in front of the window hanging in her sewing room. But can you imagine? I mean, 12 foot high and 6 foot wide. The potential for this plant growing it outdoors. I mean, that is massive. That's massive. But I'm assuming growing it in the house like we do, you know. I mean, you would have to have it in perfect conditions, you know, bright sun all day long, you know, watering it correctly, feeding it correctly, but I'm sure it can get pretty darn big in the house. But that's what I love about this plant, is just the leaves are so thick and cute. They're like little buttons. That's what they remind me of, little buttons. Kind of like my Hoya Apavata. I love that plant. It's so round and perfect. But, so the tendrils can climb, you know, like a Hoya, or they can hang down. Like you can see, this one is starting to kind of flop over. I wish she was kind of going this way, but she's doing her own thing. But once they start falling over, like this one's starting to fall over and hang down, that's how I'll grow mine, is just as a hanging plant. And I've already been over the light. You want it in full to part sun to get the best growth out of this, you know, plant. Because it does like hot, full sun. And I already said, you know, let it dry out between waterings. You want to let it dry out completely, and then water it again, because the leaves are so thick it stores so much water. You want it in a well-draining soil, obviously, and I like to keep my succulent type plants in terracotta because I like to water, so I have to be very careful. Especially with my succulents. I have a few, I don't have a lot, but all of my succulents are in terracotta, so and I try to ignore them. I try to ignore my succulents. I don't water, well, here in the summer I water them once a week because it's so dang hot, but in the winter I just kind of ignore my succulents, and they do so much better. But so I would suggest putting her in a terracotta pot. For myself, I mean, that's the best way to go for me. So And then propagation on this plant, I've never personally propagated this plant and I don't really plan on it. But from what I read, you want to cut, like this is a new growth. You would want to cut this, or like this is, I think this is a new growth. Yes, it is. You'd want to cut that, because if you cut like on an old growth, like say right here, here's a good example. This is probably the cutting that I received. I hope you guys can see this. See how she cut it and then it grew off sideways. Can you see? I hope. Oh, that's worse. But you can see where the cut is right here, and then it grew out a new stem from the leaf node. But so you'd want to try to take like a newer cutting off the newer growth, unless you don't mind it side trailing, side winding like that, which to me I really don't, you know, I really don't care. But I probably won't propagate this. I probably should do like this piece, this wonky piece that don't have no leaves. I don't know if that is a new growth or old growth. I have no idea because I don't remember anymore. But I guess it's pretty easy to propagate. They said you would want to cut it and then let it dry out and harden off. You know, you're cutting the piece that you cut. Let that harden off, and then you can either stick it back in potting soil, but usually if I'm propagating in soil and trying to get root growth, I like to use a more moisture holding soil and not put so much perlite in it, and maybe propagate it in a plastic pot so it holds the moisture a little bit better. And I like to use a rooting hormone because it does kind of speed up the process. And most rooting hormones have a fungicide in them, so it kind of helps your cutting from not rotting sometimes. But you could do spag. And they also said water propagation works too. It's just important that, like, say if you were doing this, you would say I would cut it like maybe about right here at that node, and then because there's like 3 nodes, but then I would like pop off this leaf and then make sure that fresh leaf would grow out roots from that, like in water or soil or spag. And maybe like if you were doing spag, you could just cut it and then lay it down in spag. I don't know if all the roots would shoot out, because I've never propagated this plant. It's just from what I've read. So you would have to find that information somewhere else, because I just have never done this particular plant and probably don't really plan to. But it you can also until the roots start growing, it's nice if you can mist your cuttings until the roots start growing. It will absorb water in through the leaves and the stem, and then maybe mist off the top of the dirt. I have a lot of good propagations, just misting them until they, you know, can actually grow roots and suck water up into the roots for the plant. But and as far as feeding it, I just feed it my normal, you guys know me, my worm castings and fish, I was going to say fish oil, fish fertilizer, but I don't really think that it requires a whole lot of fertilizer. You know, not like say a philodendrons. Philodendrons love to eat and they grow so much better. I don't think succulents really need as much. So maybe if you're doing it once a month in the summer and, you know, maybe backing off. Ooh, my camera light just shut off. Oh no, I'm gonna have to charge that back up. But, so I'm gonna have to say bye-bye because my light went away. But I was done anyways. The feed was the last thing I wanted to talk about. And as far as humidity, it's a succulent, so, you know, no real, I don't think it really needs a whole lot of humidity. Well, then again, maybe it would if you're growing it in full sun. You know, in very bright light, it might appreciate a little bit more humidity around it. I don't know. It's from Madagascar, and Madagascar is a tropical area with a lot of rain and a lot of humidity. So I'm sure it would appreciate humidity. But I think it also would do fine, you know, without it. So, alright guys, that is it for this plant, the silver dollar vine succulent. And I am not going to say the botanical name again because it's ridiculous. But, and there is more plants that are called silver dollar vine, but they're a different kind of a plant. So this is different, a little bit different than some of the other one that's out there, which I do not have the other one. I specifically wanted this one, but, alright guys, I am going to let you go, and I will talk to you later.